You're listening to the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Thursday, February 20th, a special edition of 49 Carats, but it's off season. So, sometimes we throw some bonus episodes in there for you guys. And today I'm really excited to have CGS All-Star Director of Scouting and Player Personnel, Mike Rittelmann. Mike, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again, Steph.
Yeah, if you guys don't recall, he was on the show. It was last year, right? Or was it 2 years?
I think so. Last year or the year
before?
before.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for obviously, like I'm very familiar with the CGS, have been for a few years now. But for anyone who maybe hasn't heard about CGS All-Star before, why don't you remind us just what it is and how it's different from other pre-draft All-Stars that we know of?
Absolutely. So the event just completed its 11th year. It was founded by Jose Jefferson and Craig Red. We're down in Fort Worth, Texas. We're usually the first event, all-star event out of the gate. First, second week in January. We bring over 200 plus, 250 plus athletes from all over the country, even Canadian colleges as well. A shout out Taylor Elgersma.
Yeah.
So what our niche is that 5th through 7th round undrafted free agent type of player. And, really the back end roster guys. And I heard a stat a while back that NFL rosters are like 30% like lower round undrafted free agent types like the back end of the roster guys. But those are your core special teamers. They're developmental guys. Those are your guys you build your foundation with, for the future. And, I really take pride in what we do at CGS. A couple of our alumni, Brendan Schooler, who just was named last month and a first team NFL pros core special teamer. The cool thing about Brendan was he was a receiver, then went DB, played at Oregon, transferred to Texas, and then, had that special teams background. He was like first team all-pack special teamer in college too. So those are the type of guys that that have come through CGS, and it's awesome to see to be a part of their journey just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am going to ask you about Taylor at some point, because that I think is kind of a similar story of this year, right? So that one's definitely caught a lot of eyes. But I know that you've said before in our last interview, you said that you guys kind of, when you're planning scouting for a certain, your CGS roster, which I know happens around the summertime, you kind of think about what the vision is going to be for that year's roster. So what was the vision for this year's roster? What were you guys looking to accomplish and showcase? Was there something specific?
I think everything starts up front. And I think there's that vibe with this year's draft class, and I think we'll get into it. The offensive line and defensive line play. First and foremost, I thought both groups were phenomenal at the event this year. Shout out to our scouting team. Jose, Craig, myself, Gino Camilleri, who's our assistant director of scouting and player personnel, and we have a good core group of guys, and then our partners. Tracking football, who have partnered with us the last couple of years, and what their team does for us. Starting up front, and then on the defensive line, and I think we saw it in this past year's Super Bowl where, you need to get after the quarterback, and a couple names that jumped out to me were Javari Harvey from SMU and Brian Ugu from Miami, Ohio, like two long, edge type players. And I can go on and on. There was Jalen Gaines from Illinois State. There was, good Lord, I mean, how much time do we have tonight?
I got time.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. So offensive line wise, the size was something that stood out to us this year, was the size. And one thing that stood out to me was the tackle class. Marshall Forner from Minnesota State, Jake Wiley from Houston. Luke's Felix Falelo from Hawaii, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He played at Hawaii. He's from Australia, and he measured in at verified 6'7". I mean, with the NFL international pathway, and then also like the international spots that teams have this year, that's a guy who can develop into something special. Just long, strong, and the ability to be a key cornerstone player on the outside, on the exterior of the offensive line. And then there was Gerald Mincey from Kentucky. I mean, the list goes on and on from the offensive tackle spots. Guards. Just kind of heading offensive line wise, like a guard I was impressed by was Ozzie Hutchinson from Albany, and Ozzie was on the Senior Bowl watch list. Had a little bit of injury throughout the year, but athletic, man. Athletic. I mean, there's Michael Ford from Kansas. There's Marlon Martinez from Mississippi State. Peyton Dunn from Houston. That's a large human being, and he can play some football now. So it's awesome. I mean, it starts up front. I think you can never have too many pass rushers. You can never have too many good offensive linemen on your roster. And I think we did a good job as a scouting staff, bringing that all together.
Yeah, I know it was definitely like this draft is seen as one of the deepest for defensive tackle in quite some time. So I'm sure
Yep.
The CGS roster did reflect that. I'm hearing running back as well is another one. Is that kind of something like you've I'm sure you've picked up on in your time of scouting this past year, right?
Yeah, and then like kind of from the defensive tackle spot, a name that keep an eye on that was at CGS, who's on Bruce Feldman's freak list, was Aiden Huntington from Tulane, and a little bit undersized, but freak athlete, freak measurables, running back. Yeah, you're right. The running back and defensive tackles overall in this draft class, I think from top to bottom is great depth. But I go back to the defensive line class that's coming out, and it's just if you're a team coming out this year that needs a defensive end and edge type player, a defensive tackle, I think this is the year where depth wise, it's unparalleled what we've seen from the past couple of years.
Oh yeah, definitely, and just the fact that you guys focus on day 3 UDFA type of guys, potential special teams guys.
Yeah.
Like obviously those guys aren't perfect, and no player is, right? So when you're evaluating players,
right.
who might be a good fit for what like the CGS is looking for, are there specific traits that you kind of latch on to and take into consideration a little extra, like the measurables, the athleticism, like the size you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, especially when you get down to the lower level players like your FCS D2s, D3s, NAIAs. You're looking for the height, weight. They got to check the boxes. The height, weight. Are they an all-conference type of player? And I think that's a value that sometimes in the evaluation that goes by the wayside. If you're not dominating where you're at right now at your level, I think how is that going to translate to the NFL, the CFL, the UFL? You got to be an all-conference type of player. You got to be an all-American type of player in some cases. So those are the check boxes, because you want to make sure everything's checked off correctly, and then go to the film. How is he productive on the field? A lot of that goes into play when you're building out a roster from 200 to 250 athletes from across the country and including Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, about the Canadian thing. Well, I know you guys had 217 prospects this year, all 32 NFL teams, but there were also 9 CFL teams, 8 UFL teams, and there were 16 total Canadian prospects this year that you guys had. And I remember last year you guys had Theo Benedict, who I got to interview, the great kid, and I believe you guys also had his teammate, I think, right, or someone else from Canada on there.
Man, Maybe I'm not sure. I got to look at last year's roster. I'm still fresh on this year's roster, so
I know you got to clean the slate.
Yeah, it's got to make more memory. So yes. So we actually had 16 players. We actually had 12 selected to the CFL Combine, which will be at the end of March. So it's awesome. And then the headliner of those prospects in general is Taylor Elgersma from Wilfrid Laurier, the quarterback who got selected to the Senior Bowl. And I thought, he showcased his talents well. Taylor's a great kid, comes from a great program. The adjustments he had to make, he did the All-Star game tour. He was with us with the Tropical Bowl, and then he got the Senior Bowl invite. So, I'm happy for him. I'm happy, I'm happy for any CGS alum that, is taking that next step to obtaining their goals to, play professional football. But seeing Taylor on the NFL Network making those throws, and he had that great throw in the game, cross the body down the field. I forget how many yards, but awesome to see. And, I'm excited what the draft process is going to bring to him. And then, we'll go from there.
Yeah, and that's what it's about, right? The fact that, you guys have your event, in January before all the other All-Stars, it does give guys a chance to get those eyes on them and potentially, get to other All-Star games just like Taylor did. So how was it just kind of seeing the domino effect of him having started out at CGS and then getting those other opportunities?
It's great because we're in it for the kids first and foremost, and we're in it for the players, and being able to sit back and watch how their talents take them to the next level is awesome. And then we also had Blaine Taylor from Abilene Christian, the wide receiver, get selected for the East-West Shrine game, which was awesome. He's a big receiver, 6'3", 6'4", good speed, good ball control, with the hands. So it was awesome to see the fruits of the labor of our scouting team building this roster and being able to see it succeed down the road.
Yeah, and speaking of the big turnout, right? We already mentioned 32 NFL teams were there at this year's CGS. And like all the pre-draft All-Star games, like it's a chance for players to meet with scouts, have those conversations. Yeah. How does that process go at the CGS? Is it like the typical speed dating style, as they say, or is it a little more formal, less formal? How does it go?
We've kind of tailored it to make it, scout friendly. So we've been having this program called CGSU, where we have interns come to the event, and then they become runners for the scouts, for the teams. And it's, the scouts can relax at a table, and then their intern, which they can develop a relationship with over the couple of days of CGS, really getting that, bird's eye view of the event, how the process worked from a scouting perspective, and they'll go and get the players and bring them to those teams. So you won't see too many scouts, running around trying to find players like the norm is, but we try to make it scout friendly. And, Jose Jefferson and Neil Stratton, John Bonaventura created the CGSU program, and we've had a lot of success with guys actually getting opportunities to be scouts at the next level, and it's been awesome. So if anyone's interested in that, please reach out to me or Jose. But that's how that process works. Them going to get the players, they'll get a list of players from the teams, and then they'll go get the players for the scouts.
Awesome. Yeah. And what are some guys from this year's CGS? I know you've already mentioned some names, but what are some guys that you're expecting will be contributors at the next level?
Yeah. And, I don't want to say it's a guessing game or anything like that. I'm excited to see what the pro day circuit's going to look like, because I think we have a lot of good testers. I mentioned Aiden Huntington from Tulane. Ruben Lowry III from University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. He's a safety, corner, nickel type of guy. Explosive. I think he's going to test very well. I'm excited to see, a couple of the receivers. Hollis Mathis from William and Mary. who's actually a quarterback, and then he converted to the receiver. He was actually their leading receiver this year. I think some crazy stat where he was like the second player in NCAA history to have like 1,000 yards passing and 1,000 yards receiving or something like that. I gotta find that. I'll retweet that or something like that. But like, I'm excited for Hollis. Going down the line here, from Max McLeod from Colorado School of the Mines, Zachary Franklin, the receiver from Illinois. He was a transfer from Ole Miss and UTSA. That's someone to look out for. Bryson Green from Wisconsin. That's a big receiver. I talked about Blaine. Jordan Polk from Texas State, a corner, I think is going to test very well. Good, productive corner. And I talked about the offense and defensive lines. I mean, that's going to be something that's going to be a staple. That's something we pride ourselves in at CGS is like we want to build from the inside out. Having good offensive, defensive lines. Size. Catches the eye. Let's just say that. 6'6", 6'5", 6'7", whatever. So. I thought we did a good job building out the roster from that standpoint, but those are the couple guys. Tanner, I want to say Tanner Volk from Central Washington. That's a safety. He's a safety. He won the Cliff Harris Award as a junior in 2023, the first to ever do it. The Cliff Harris is like the best defensive player at the D2 level, I believe. That's a guy to look at. Will Brooks from Tennessee is another safety, 6'1", 6'2". So I can go on and on about the roster. There are guys who can, I think, make a standout name on special teams. So it'll be interesting to see through the pro days, and I'll be glued to my phone for the month of March.
Yeah, for sure. And I see you getting excited just talking about these players. So I'm getting pumped up too. I'm like, man, I got to look these guys up and start watching film on some of these
absolutely.
guys. Add them to my list.
Absolutely.
Now, you had a tweet from earlier today that kind of grabbed my attention. It says not every offensive tackle with sub 34-inch arms has to be moved inside. Also, not every offensive tackle can be moved inside. Tell me a little bit more about this tweet, because that's a huge discussion around draft time, right? It's like almost every tackle in college is like, oh, but he's better. He's probably going to be a guard or interior offensive lineman in the NFL, right? Like, is that something that kind of a bit of a pet peeve for you?
A little bit, just because again, it's such a different world playing on the interior on the offensive line than it is playing tackle. And to the person who doesn't understand offensive line dynamics and all that, playing guard and center is completely different than playing tackle. And the short arms concept, I mean, I think Duke Manyweather had a great tweet earlier too. The list of Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame offensive tackles with sub 34-inch arms. I mean, it's not about the length of the arm; it's how you use your hands, how your technique, your hand placement in pass pro. And I think that's sometimes that gets lost in the evaluation process. And not everyone can be moved inside the guard. That's a tackle. I saw someone tweeted out that Will Campbell should go to guard. No, just keep Will Campbell at tackle. He's a very, very good offensive tackle.
Of all people, like Will Campbell, really?
I don't know. That's
a new one.
It's that time of year, I guess. I don't know. So
yes.
That's why I kind of went on my rant here, and not every offensive tackle needs to be moved inside.
I like this though. Because I do agree with that. But it is kind of tough to know, like, where guys fits best. I guess, like, with what you're saying, how their technique, how they use their hands and all that does matter. It's not just about like the arm size. I was watching Marcus Bryant from Missouri, who's the
yes
here's their left tackle.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, and everyone's talking about Membao, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm just like, why is no one talking about Marcus Bryant? Well, he's a little bit like slower. He's not like as athletic as Membao, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So like, he's like one of those guys where like, oh, well, maybe he'd be better, on the inside because he doesn't have the same speed or athleticism. But I'm like, I don't know. He looks great at tackle. I don't know if I'd want to move. It's just one of those debates.
If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And I think the film doesn't lie. Going back to the Will Campbell thing, I wasn't expecting to see that Will Campbell moving the guard. I mean, he can probably play all 5 spots if he wanted
Yeah.
to. I mean, that's the type of caliber offensive lineman talent that he is. So, I mean, he's a very good offensive tackle. So let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's so hard finding like a really good offensive tackle, I think,
Yeah,
because a lot of teams
absolutely.
have the inclination to move guys on the inside. We talked about the strong position groups in this class, talked about the trenches, talked about running back. What about some like weaker position groups in this one, and weaker for lack of a better word, like just one that's not as deep?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I never want to label a position that's each year. I think, let me backtrack here. I think each year it's a talented group of quality talent at each position group going into the draft. And what I mean by that is like, these are highly specialized athletes regardless of their position. Is there more depth than others in certain years? Yeah, we see that with the defensive tackles, the running backs, that in retrospect, so I don't want to say there's, like a weaker group or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I think drop my phone there, but I think I think from the defensive line standpoint, the offensive line standpoint, I think it's your stronger groups. Quarterback. The quarterback groups are always, it's always a hot topic.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see how they throw. Who's throwing at the combine, who's throwing at their pro days, who's having a private pro day, anything like that. So I think the next coming month, starting this weekend, with the combine starting, I think you're going to get a better feel for this draft class as a whole, and then with the pro day circuit in March, you're going to see, okay, where is the depth at? And I still say the offensive defensive line this year, more so the defensive line. And I sound like a broken record saying that over and over again. But, after seeing the Super Bowl, I'm fixated on, oh my gosh, you need guys to get after the quarterback. Then on vice versa, you need guys to protect the quarterback.
We're all saying that. I mean, that was like a clinic, a master class of the trenches. It truly was.
Yeah.
Now, I know last year when we spoke, it was a little deeper in the draft process where guys were having pro days. So I agree. Like there were a lot of guys that specifically I asked you about who had like, those strong pro days and people were talking about them more. So I definitely expect that to be, something. Guys' names are going to start buzzing a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, Mike, I'm going to start reaching out to some of the players that participated at this year's CGS. As you know, like I do interviews.
Awesome.
As far as like being a great interviewee, who would be your top choice for an interview?
Now you're putting me on the spot here. Oh, man.
Or just like personality, like character. You can name a few. It doesn't have to just be one guy or just anyone that comes to mind.
Well, I'll say first and foremost, I think anyone who was at the event would be great. I think you got to get Taylor on just from his travels.
Yeah.
Blaine Taylor's one from his travels, going from CGS to the East-West Shrine game. The offensive line group, I think you can never go wrong with talking to offensive linemen. They're always a good time to chat with, and then kind of go from there. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. I don't know.
That was good. And
Yeah,
I did actually want to talk to Taylor at the Senior Bowl because
yeah.
I was there too. But he that whole time, like he had a scrum, man. Like he had
Good
a
for
lot of
him. Good
yeah,
for
I
him.
thought it was great. And I think,
Good for
a lot
him.
of people are taking interest in his story, and
That's
it's
awesome.
definitely an interesting one. So I will reach out. I'll see if I try to get him for an interview. But yeah, no,
That's
I got a
awesome.
couple names I got some leads here.
Yeah, definitely the offensive line group. You can never go wrong with that.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today, talking about
Always,
this year's
always.
draft class, and hopefully we could do it again next year, right?
Oh, absolutely. You should. You're more than welcome to come down to CGS. We welcome all media. It's a great time in Fort Worth. Great barbecue.
Oof.
That's yeah. So that's never an issue there. But no, we welcome all media. More than welcome to come down. The biggest thing I want to highlight is we want to showcase the players, and they're going through a critical process in their time in their life right now. The biggest job interview. With
Yeah.
pro days. Top 30 visits, everything like that. So whatever we can do to showcase their talents, the better. And I appreciate all the draft media out there. And then we'll see how the next month or two goes, and we'll go from there. But thanks for having me on. Love the content you provide as well.
Yeah, and I love what you guys do with the CGS, putting these guys on the map, giving them that, that platform, putting them in front of,
Yeah,
scouts to be able to get their name out there. So really great work, keep it up over there at
thank you,
CGS.
thank you.
And, this is the exciting part, right? Seeing
Oh,
what these guys
absolutely,
do next, right? So hope
absolutely.
you
I can get
enjoy
some
it.
sleep.
I'll enjoy it as well.
I can get some sleep a little bit after all this process. But no, thank you again, and then we'll see how everything shakes out here in April, right? In the draft, and we'll go
Yes.
from there.
Will do, yeah. And thank you to everyone that tuned in. Make sure you like this video if you haven't yet. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. There will be plenty more interviews just like this one and prospect interviews as well. So make sure to tune into that. But for now, have a good rest of your Thursday, folks. Peace.